Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshunamilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Guruve Gaura Chandraya Radhikaye Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tad Bhaktaya Namo Namaha. Yam Pravajantam Apekta Krityam Rapayano Viraha Katara Juhava Putreti Tam Haitaya Taravo Benedus Tam Savabhutam Hridayam Munimanatosmi Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatam Vyasam Tato Jayamutirayat Bhaktya Vihina Parada Lakshay Kiptastakamari Tarangamadye Kripa Maitvam Sharanam Prapanna Brinde Namaste Charanara Vindam Tave Vasmi Najivami Tvaya Vina Iti Vigyaya Radhe Tvam Nayanam Charanandike Vancha Kalpatarubhascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So, we're going to continue with the beautiful Sri Caitanya Siksamrta, compiled by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And we are first offering our most humble obeisance unto the lotus feet of our beloved Gurus, unto Sri Guru Pada Padmanita Leda Bhavishta Om Vishnu Pad Asto Tarasat Sri Srimad Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada and Sri Guru Pada Padmanita Leda Bhavishta Om Vishnu Pad Asto Tarasat Sri Srimad Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj, unto our exalted Rupanuga Guru Varga and all the assembled Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis. So, today we are on the third stream of the seventh rainfall. In other words, seventh chapter of this Caitanya Siksamrta, 7 out of 8. And the third section, Deliberation on Santa Rasa. We heard about all the ingredients of Rasa, all the different elements that combine to create this, at this point, inconceivable tattva, conception, but which is the natural state of consciousness, of life, of being, of the perfected soul. So now we're going to hear about that soul who is situated in the mood of Santa Rasa, the mood of neutrality. So there's some description, and then there's lots of references. Okay, so let's begin. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, the ultimate object of worship is not nirvishesh, undistinguishable or impersonal. Rather, it is savishesh, personal. It's amazing how often this idea, this refutation of the impersonal is refuted throughout the text, over and over and over. And we see that also in the writings of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada. We see that in the writings of our Srila Prabhupada. This Mayavad conception is a disease. It's the greatest obstacle to the happiness of the spirit soul, to be disconnected from God. The whole point of Vedic civilization was to connect all beings in a loving relationship with the Lord. In the beginning, you're connected through a sense of duty with our divine creator, the overlord of the universe, right? So you have to obey the laws of that universe. But by doing so, one becomes promoted first through consciousness, by coming to higher and higher levels of intelligence and natural qualities of sattva gun, but also by that process, that culture of Varnashram, the opportunity to associate with and serve great personalities, self-realized personalities. And that is the key to everything. That's from which everything comes. This was in every scripture, and especially in Bhagavad Gita from the very beginning. Shishashteham sharimam tam prapandam. Arjuna abandoning previous friendly relations with Krishna and saying, no, now I'm confused. I don't know what to do, what not to do. Whatever I do under the rules and regulations of Varnashram, if I fight, there will be disaster. I will have to kill my own dear relatives and friends. If I don't fight, again, the world is plunged into irreligion. There's no solution. Now I'm your disciple, and the soul surrendered unto you. And then over and over, that same idea of the necessity of guru. Krishna is the original guru, and then his pure representatives come to us to deliver that message, right? So, and over again, the point being that they are hammering and destroying that disease, that contaminated conception of Mayavad, which is the ultimate rejection of the Lord. We have come to this material world to enjoy independently in forgetfulness of God, but he comes at all times, so many places, in order to awaken that sense of relationship, that sense of potential and opportunity. And thus we see so many great teachers and prophets throughout history teaching religion according to the eligibility of the culture at that time, right? But this impersonalism, and that's why Srila Prabhupada, Nirvishesh Shunyavadi, right? Gauravani Prachadine, the message, the teachings of Mahaprabhu, which are the teachings of the soul awakening to his eternal loving relationship. But in order to do that, Nirvishesh Shunyavadi Paschatya Shatarine, eliminating that impersonalism and voidism. And so, even in this chapter, deliberating on Santa Rasa, he begins by saying the ultimate object of worship is not nirvishesh. It is savishesh, personal. One whose intelligence is unflinchingly directed towards that which is related to Bhagavan is called shama. The devotee in whose heart this shama has manifested will gradually develop rati. That rati is called shantarati, tranquility. The ashraya, or the shelter of shantarati, is the soul who has attained such peace. And the object of this rati is the personal form of the Supreme Lord, or Savishesh Bhagavan, personal God. Sa means with, right? Nirvishesh, ni means no. Sa means with, right? With qualities. That personal God. So when one begins to awaken in the most beginning stage of an awareness and a relationship with that personal God, one achieves tranquility, freedom from all the woes of this material world, and awakening to my identity as a spirit, an eternal servant of that personal God, that loving God. The ashraya, shelter of Santa Rasa, is the soul who has attained such peace. And the object of this rati is the personal form of the Supreme Lord, or Savishesh Bhagavan. Such a peaceful soul is completely devoid of any material conception in regard to Bhagavat Tattva. His worship is the yoga of attaining spiritual bliss, remaining within the bliss of his own self. The devotee completely rejects any inclination for material enjoyment. His relationship is with Krishna in the form of Paramatma. That's the Lord within the heart. It's a personal form of Bhagavan, but we're going to see that this conception is somewhat incomplete. Like the moon, right? The Lord is showing himself to a certain degree. It's like in the, when just after the new moon, the moon begins to reveal himself, and there's just a sliver. And then after a few days, a bit more of that crescent, then a quarter moon. So the Lord is always omnipotent and all-potent and complete, but it's how he shows himself, right, to us. So his relationship is with Krishna in the form of Paramatma, and in parentheses it says a slightly personalized form of Brahm. Therefore, Paramatma is the object of his rati. He has no attraction for meditation on impersonal Brahm. Instead, his attraction is towards a somewhat personalized form of Brahm. Brahm in this case meaning the energy of the Lord, the impersonal energy of the Lord. But when that energy of the Lord begins to manifest qualities and form, right? Then he's a personalized form, right? But why is it a somewhat personalized form? Let's hear what he says. For a soul in whom this rati has arisen, Brahm is personalized. However, this soul is somewhat unsure of the truth concerning the eternal variegatedness of Brahm. He does not have a completely fixed conviction in the eternal personalized nature of God. Thus, within his heart, sometimes a four-armed form of the Lord arises, sometimes a majestic form of Krishna arises, and other times the all-spiritual Paramatma form arises. The sages, such as Sanak, Sanatan, Sananda, and Sanat Kumar, are ideal examples of devotees possessed of Shanta Rati. And there's a footnote here referring us to this verse from the Bhakti-rasamrta-sindhu that begins with Atmaramas tu Sanaka Sananda Mukkamata Pradannatya Sanakadinam Rupam Bhaktis Cha Kachate. There's many more verses, but I'll read the translation. Persons such as Sanak, Sanatan, Sananda, and Sanat Kumar are considered to be examples of those who find pleasure in the self, Atmarama. Since Sanak and the others are the highest of this type, their form and devotion is described. These four always appear to be 5 or 6 years old, have bright and beautiful golden bodies, are clothed only with the wind, and usually live together. They prayed, O Mukunda, until your complete form, that consists of eternality, joy, and consciousness, and is as beautiful as a bright blue young tamal tree, appeared directly to us, our happiness was for that essence which is devoid of all qualities and is beyond the senses. Okay, so we remember that story because they created by Lord Brahma, but they were inclined towards the impersonal conception. They were not interested in procreating or anything like that. They had complete detachment. But then, by the wish of their father, who did not want them to be relegated to that unfortunate state of realization, they were exposed to the scent of the tulsi leaves coming from the lotus feet of the Lord. And thus they become attracted to that. Their transcendental senses became awakened. Right? And when they became awakened, they wanted to find the source of that fragrance. There was nothing material that attracted them. It was so much higher than anything material. And it was attractive enough to pull them away from attraction to the impersonal. Right? And that's when they went to Vaikuntha, and that whole pastime began. So, regarding their nishta, again, another quote from the Bhakti-rasamrta-sindhu, same section. When will I live in a mountain cave or under a large tree, wear only a loincloth and develop an appetite for living off fruits and roots, and meditate continually in my heart on that light of consciousness and bliss named Mukunda, wherein a day and a night pass like a single second. This verse illuminates their nishta. This is all I want. I want to meditate in my heart on that beautiful form, living devoid of any material interaction, the bare minimum. No need for clothing, no need for shelter, just under a tree, subsisting occasionally on roots and whatever is provided in the forest. Right? But in my heart, continually meditating on that form. Right? And then regarding udipan, or that which stimulates their love. And again, further description from the Bhakti-rasamrta-sindhu. The ascetics attain only a small sliver of that moon of the happiness that the devotees of Santa Rasa achieve. The wise have declared the following to be the udipan specific to Santa Rasa. Okay, so ascetics are people who are living apart from society and completely devoid of interaction with material nature, like somebody who's in Santa Rasa, but not yet on that stage of internal vision and realization, right? They're freed from material distress, and so there's a level of satisfaction and happiness there, but not to the same degree. So what stimulates their love? So we get this list. Listening to the principal Upanishads, residing in isolated places, having Krishna manifest in their purified heart, deliberating upon philosophical principles, predominance of knowledge, appearance of Krishna's universal form, association with intellectual devotees, and discussing scriptures concerned with the nature of absolute reality. A beautiful example of all this is given during Gopakumar's travel through the different levels of the universe. And when he gets to the planets of the sages, like Pipalayana and others, he encounters and interacts and practices under the guidance of devotees in different degrees of this Santa Rasa. And we get to see and hear their descriptions of what they consider to be perfection, right? And the joy and the contentment that they feel in their internal meditation. They're not doing any real seva, interacting with that Lord, because that Lord is the all-powerful, independent form that doesn't require anything. They're just tranquil and happy to be seeing and meditating on that form. Sometimes to such an extent that they lose all sense of their own consciousness and go off into some trance, and when they come out of it, there's no saying how long they were in that trance, what they were doing. When Gopakumar goes into that and then comes out, he's bewildered and dissatisfied, and they tell him, oh no, that was very good, very good. But in Gopakumar's heart, he's thinking, oh, I want to interact with the Lord. I want to personally serve his form. I don't want to just sit and stare at him. And they have this big discussion on that. There's a long section in that part of the Brihad Bhagavatamrita. So, those are Udipan. And here's another verse about that, more stimulus. The following are Udipan of the devotees in Santa Rasa. The scent of Tulsi offered at the lotus feet of the Lord. The sound of Krishna's conch, a holy mountain, an auspicious forest, a sacred region, the Ganges River, the realization of the transitory nature of all objects, and the destruction of all things through time. So we can see there's a great mixture of gyan, tattva here, which stimulates this awareness that this is the form of the transcendental Lord, and so it invokes some degree of, it stimulates their desire to meditate and see this beautiful form, but we're not yet getting any sense of relationship or interaction. The quality of mamata or possessiveness, my Lord, has not really awakened in this stage. And so Srila Prabhupada in Caitanya Charitamrita, when he's discussing this, when the different kinds of what do you call relationship are being described, he calls the Santa Rasa somewhat impersonal. Somewhat impersonal. So, now he's going to go into Anubhav, a description of that. And Anubhav is the external expression of the internal sentiments of the heart, right? So, how do we know? How do these things manifest? Staring at the tip of the nose, behaving like a renunciate, walking while looking at the ground 4 meters ahead, showing the Gyan Mudra, joining the thumb and forefingers together. Right? Is that this? Absence of hatred, even for the enemies of the Lord. Lack of intense attachment for the devotees of the Lord. Showing great regard for the final destruction of material bondage and for possessiveness. Lack of false ego and silence are some of the special anubhavs of a person in Santa Rasa. So did you notice this? Even no hatred for devotees, for non-devotees or enemies of the devotees, and no special affection for devotees themselves. This really is a position of neutrality and complete detachment from the affairs and interactions of the living entities, even devotees or non-devotees in relationship to the devotees, which is why we can see that it's a bit impersonal, not entirely desirable state. So then, the sattvika bhavs, these are the internal transformations, right? Romancha sveda kampadya sattvika pralayam vina. In Santa Rasa, all the sattvika bhavs, such as standing of the hair on end, perspiration and shaking of the body, occur with the exception of fainting. Okay. That's somewhat spiritually technical, so I'll just leave it for what it is. They don't faint. But all these other symptoms, hairs on end, perspiration, trembling of the body, right? Regarding sancharin, this is sanchari bhavs. These are the transitory emotions we've discussed before. In Santa Rasa, the sanchari bhavs such as nirveda, driti, harsha, mati, smriti, outsukata, avega, vitarka, and others appear. Now they're Jaiva Dharma, you can get a translation of all of these terms. I'm not equipped with that, so we'll just leave it at that. Regarding sthāyi, right? Sthāyi bhav, that essential component of one's individual identity. The sthāyi bhav in Santa Rasa is Shantarati. It has two types, sama, ordinary, and sandra, intense. As in the case of Shukadev, impressions of jnana will slacken by the mercy of the Lord, and the person will attain the perfection of bliss in bhakti ras. Right, because Shukadev, he took his birth appearing to be someone in Santa Rasa, right, for the purpose of teaching, so to show that even someone in the impersonal stage, by hearing the beauty of the shlokas of the Bhagavatam, the glories of the pastimes of the Supreme Lord in Braj, it can awaken a much greater and higher attraction. So now, having discussed the first part of Shantaras, now he's going to describe the object of Shantarati. He says, the form of Bhagavan is eternal, yet because the devotees in Shantarati are not completely certain of this fact, they do not have feelings of mamata, possessiveness towards Sri Krishna. Such mamata is naturally composed of attachment to a personal form. Even though they do not have feelings of mamata, because the rati of the devotees in Shantarati is unmixed with any material attraction, they always remain in a pure state. Sri Hari is the object, the Vishaya of the devotees in Shantarati. He is the personified, condensed form of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. Ganibhuta Satchid Ananda Sarup. He's the crest jewel of self-contained personalities. Atmarama Shiromani, right? Atmarama means self-satisfied, right? Self-contained, Shiromani, crest jewel. He's the super soul, the Paramatma, and the absolute truth, Parabrahm. He possesses an eternal, non-changing form, Sadasarup Samaprapta, and bestows the highest destination, Gati Data. Sri Hari is expert in bestowing mercy, Doya Shila, and is unlimited, Vibhu. The jiva, who is the shelter of this rati, is either self-satisfied or a performer of austerities. A certain personality named Mukunda, who is possessed of all wonderful qualities, is beyond the perception of the mundane senses, self-manifest, and the form of condensed knowledge. He is the direct object of the sthāyi bhav of the Shanta Bhaktas. This is very interesting because in every description we're getting here, he's indicating, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, a certain uncertainty. And I'm getting the sense this uncertainty means that sometimes this sense of relationship and conception of the Lord, he's obviously their eternal object of worship. But sometimes they are not completely certain of the fact. In other words, there's this lingering, I don't know, not attraction to, but contentment with the impersonal condition. Right? Because as Srila Prabhupada says, it has a certain impersonal conception to it. So there may be a little wavering, but then again, we're hearing here that there are different gradations of Santa Rasa. And so personalities like the four Kumaras, they're on the highest stages of Santa Rasa. In fact, they visit Navadvip, right? Dham, they're aware of Gaurachandra. They visit, Vrindavan, they're aware of this. They compile beautiful prayers to Srimati Radhika. But then there could be others on a lower level of Santa Rasa. Lower level meaning that they might be a bit more inclined or comfortable with the impersonal conception as well, being comfortable drifting into that, and that's what we see in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, in the discussion of the sages, when Gopakumar has lost himself, and they say, oh, that's very good, very, very good. But someone who has mamata, they never want to lose their sense of their relationship with that personal form. Right? So in Shanta Rasa, because that mamata is not so developed, can certain uncertainty back and forth there. So no wonder Gopakumar could not be content in that environment. So, where did I leave off? Oh, the stimuli, the udipan, of such devotees are hearing the principal Upanishads. Now, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, I guess he is now describing in his narration what we heard the evidentiary verses from Bhakti-rasamrta-sindhu. So the stimuli, or the udipan of such devotees, are hearing the principal Upanishads, living in solitary places, perceiving special inner revelations, deliberating on philosophical truths, perceiving the influence of the vidya shakti, the knowledge potency, seeing the universal form, associating with knowledgeable devotees, and discussing the meaning of the Vedanta Sutras and Upanishads with like-minded persons. When Gopakumar finally got to Satyalok, the planet of Lord Brahma, and for some time took up the post of Lord Brahma, he organized an assembly of all the personified Vedas to discuss what is the absolute truth. Right? Big assembly, Sabha, Raj Sabha. And there was all kinds of conversation and you could say debate, which for people in this Shanta Rasa are very satisfying. But it was described that many of the Upanishads were fixed in the impersonal conception. The Brahman conception, not Mayavad, but Brahman, Brahm conception. And this caused a lot of dissatisfaction to Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavat Purana, who left the assembly impatiently, dissatisfied. And then Gopakumar, as Lord Brahma, went to him and begged him, no, you please come back and discuss. Right? So even among enlightened personalities, and therefore they find a level of satisfaction and contentment in that kind of activity. Right? Deliberating on philosophical truths, perceiving the influence of vidya shakti, knowledge potency, living in solitary places. Remember, Narad Muni was content with that, and Lord Narayan appeared to him briefly and in his heart, and then disappeared, and that awakened such yearning in the heart of Narad. And then Lord Narayan said, okay, I showed myself to you, and now I've disappeared, and this is to awaken deeper greed, deeper yearning. I won't show myself again to you in this lifetime, but now, in order to gain my association and higher perfection, now you have to leave this solitary place. He was content there, right? And give this up. and now go take up the chanting of my names and travel village to village everywhere and speak about my glories. So he engaged him in active service. Right? It appears that such a personality would now be interacting with the material world, right? But he was beyond that. He was not interacting with the material world. He was delivering the message of Bhagavan to the materially conditioned souls. Right? So, solitary places, hearing the Upanishads. There's nothing wrong with these things independent, but without the higher, higher mood of service, these things are limited. They only invoke, at best, this appreciation of the existence of a form of Bhagavan and the beauty and happiness of seeing and meditating on that form. Right? So, the anubhavs, the activities following this rati, are looking at the tip of the nose, acting like a madman, an avadut, keeping the eyes focused slightly in front while walking, showing the jnana mudra, lacking hatred towards those who are inimical to God, and giving general respect to devotees. So you're just walking through the world detached, no matter who you're encountering, right? Having great respect for perfection in the form of complete destruction of material attachment, having great respect for those who have attained liberation from the subtle and gross bodies, indifference, purity, freedom from false ego, and practicing vows of silence. Except for fainting, pralaya, all of the sattvika bhavs, such as hair standing on end, etc., appear in the body of the devotees of Shantarati. Because pralaya, fainting, this is a very high stage that comes from deep emotional attachment to the Lord and caused by the kinds of emotions that are created by separation or fear for the welfare of the Lord, right? Something on a more intimate stage, right? So all these appear in the body of the devotees of Shantarati except for Pralaya. Because they are devoid of any bodily consciousness, these ecstatic symptoms only awaken up to the level of dhumayita, smoking, right? Because these stages of ecstasy are described in relation to a fire. And the first stage of fire is smoking, right? Dhumayita. Occasionally, they waken up to the glowing stage of dvalita, early stages, right, of a fire. But they never attain the state of the fully blazing level called udipta. Sometimes the vyabhichari or sanchari bhavs, such as disinterest, patience, fortitude, joy, thoughtfulness, agitation, reasoning, and remembrance, can be seen in Shantaras. Because it has such particulars, Shantaras is counted among the rasas. However, Shantaras is not present in the descriptions of the spiritual ras of Braj Leela, because it does not have its own separate existence there due to lacking the intensity of possessiveness. By great fortune, the soul can attain possessiveness towards the form of the Lord. When this possessiveness awakens, Shuddharati grows into Prem, and Prita Bhakti Ras, Dasya, manifests. So it says it doesn't have separate existence in Braj, because in Braj, we see the rasas manifesting up to the topmost level of Madhurata. And Madhura is the reservoir of all the rasas. All the rasas are completely present in Madhura, and in Braj, actually, all the rasas, all the experiences serve Madhura Ras. Madhura Ras is like earth, which contains all the qualities of all the other elements. And so, of course, Santa Rasa is there, but it's contained within the others. And all of the limited qualities of Santa Rasa are more fully developed in what we see in Braj. Okay, so that is his deliberation, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, on Santa Rasa, with footnotes and based on the writings of Srila Rupa Goswami in Bhakti-rasamrta-sindhu. Okay, so I'm going to stop this here because the next one will be Dasya Ras, and I'm going to keep these contained in slightly shorter segments. Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Gurudev ki jai, Sri Caitanya Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhar, Shivas Arigora Bhaktivinoda, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. But remember, we never disrespect devotees on any level. We never disrespect anyone. But we want to know this and aspire for more. We want to aspire for more, and we'll be hearing about more. Okay, so I'm going to close this.